It's okay to not be okay. That is what we are going to learn and explore about today. Hi, I'm Carol Schulte, founder of the Brave Initiative, and more specifically, we are going to debunk the myths, learn the tools, and feel empowered to change and shift the conversation around mental health. Because while it's an uncomfortable one, unfortunately, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Before we dive in, I have a question for you. Have you ever thought you were being secretly trained to be a spy? Or maybe you thought you were being followed by camera crews because you were convinced you were on a reality TV show? Or you had to cover all of your screens or lights around your place with blankets or sheets in case they were watching you? It's okay, you can laugh. But I have. That was me. While I may look like I'm put together, on September 18th, 2020, my life imploded. Go ahead, arrest me. I don't effing care. Want to know why? Because today is the first day of the rest of my life. That's exactly what I was yelling as I was being handcuffed, put in the back of a police car, and taken not to the police station, but to the hospital, and admitted after being almost immediately tranquilized to the psychiatric emergency unit. It was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. And overnight, I went from having this pretty cushy, fancy, amazing consulting gig on beautiful Vancouver Island, being flown around in private jets, to seeing the inside of 5 different hospitals and treatment centers over the next 2 years. Turns out I'm not a spy, and it's a good thing, because if I had just shared that with you, probably wouldn't have been a very good one. But I did figure out that I had bipolar disorder. And that diagnosis and my little pink pill box are not going anywhere anytime soon. And my life forever changed. When I was high, I would spend thousands of dollars on unnecessary things and items and tools I would never use and clothes I would never wear. I was in this small surfer town in Australia and spent I don't know how much on furniture, convinced that I would live there one day, only to, of course, never go back. And then when I was low, I would place spoons or frozen ice cubes, of course they're frozen, on my eyes, trying to get rid of the puffiness from all of the tears that I had been crying. You see, I still had to sometimes show up on screen, and the irony of the speaker who just wants to empower and inspire to be brave, the last thing I felt was brave. And there were moments where I really didn't think that I would make it. Now, while I don't know if you've ever been handcuffed or ridden in the back of a police car, and if you have, well, you and I can at least check that off our bucket lists. And I hope you've never been diagnosed with a serious mental health illness. But I do know that you've had your fair share of challenges, of struggles, of trials and tribulations. And I know this because there isn't a single person who hasn't. It's part of the human experience. And it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. I share the story with you not to indulge in a woe is me moment, but to let you know that life isn't always as it seems, and that change and uncertainty and losing control, well, it's uncomfortable. It's hard. We all have mental health. Not all of our mental health is poor, and not all of our mental health is healthy, but mental health impacts everyone. 1 in 8 people globally live with a mental health illness. Now, in America or in Canada, where I am, that number is 1 in 5, and it is changing. It is changing and becoming smaller and smaller as we go. Not only that, but it costs an estimated $12 billion lost in working days because of mental health. And the global economy, an estimated $1 trillion because of the lack of productivity when people have to stay home due to their mental health. Now, these are scary numbers, and they're real. Mental health in the workplace is a real thing, and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be more effectively navigated, because I guarantee you that you have colleagues who are suffering in silence right now. See, one of the biggest challenges with mental health is that it's invisible. It's an invisible illness. It's hard to spot. It's hard to understand. It's hard to know how to support. If someone, goodness forbid, gets cancer, you can be there for them. You send flowers. If somebody's diagnosed with a mental health illness, it's not as easy. Often they can get fired or forever be looked at or treated differently. Now, there are a lot of myths with respect to mental health and mental health illnesses, and we need to debunk some of these myths. So one of the myths is that it's the individual's fault, that it's caused by personality weakness, or that people can snap out of it if they really choose to or they try hard enough. Well, the fact is it's not actually the fault of the individual. It has nothing to do with being lazy or weak, and many people are able to actually get better. There are so many factors that can contribute. There are biological factors such as your genes, physical illness, brain chemistry. There's psychological factors, life experiences like trauma or any history of potential abuse or harm you've had, family history, and each individual case is very, very different. But it's not just a matter of being able to choose something different or snap out of it. Another myth is that people who have mental health needs, that they can't necessarily tolerate the stress of holding down a job. That is not necessarily the case. Granted, they may need some support at various times, but people with mental health issues or conditions can be just as productive as other employees. They have very good attendance when they're there. They're punctual. They're well motivated. They have a really great work ethic. Often their supervisors, their bosses report that their work is on par, if not greater, than some of their other employees. Sometimes they just need some additional support. Another myth is that there's nothing that you can do with somebody who has a mental health condition or disorder, and that there's no hope for people who have mental health illnesses. Well, that is not the truth. The fact is that friends, loved ones, colleagues can actually make a massive difference, and we're going to learn how to do that today. Last year, it showed that only 20% of adults who were living with a mental health illness actually received any treatment. And of that 20%, only half was from a professional. There is a lot of strong evidence that shows that interpersonal connections are essential for mental health. And this support is even more important for those that don't necessarily have access to the treatment, to the support, to the services that they might need. Friends and family may be really, really important influences to help somebody be able to know that they are being looked after, to know that they matter, to know that there is somebody that is noticing, and to be able to help them get access to the services that they can. Some of the things you could do is reach out, let them know that you're available to help. Bring them information about some of the resources they may have access to. Learn and share some of the facts about what's going on. Debunk some of those myths. And continue to treat them with respect, just as you would anybody else. Okay. There are a lot of different conditions, diagnoses, illnesses out there. And we're going to cover some of the most common ones, but I want to put out these top 9 just so that we bring them into the conversation here. So anxiety and depression are by far the most common of these illnesses. Anxiety is shown as characterized as persistent worry, as fear, to a point where it actually interferes with one's day-to-day. Now, we can use the words I'm anxious, I'm scared, I'm fearful, but when it gets to the point where it's interfering and impacting your daily journey through life and at work, that is a time that maybe we need to take a closer look at it. So it's one of the most common disorders. 1 in 10 people live with anxiety. And what it looks like is this excessive worry, irritability, this restlessness. They may have difficulty concentrating, sleep disturbances, they're easily fatigued, muscle tension, and it could also bring on some panic attacks. The next one is depression. Depression is also very common and the most common mood disorder that exists. So this is defined by having a persistent low mood, general fatigue, profound sadness. These are some of the prominent symptoms. This is the leading cause of absenteeism and lower productivity. And depression, if gone untreated, can lead to something more severe, such as suicide. And these rates, unfortunately, as much as we don't like to talk about them, are going up. Then we have substance use disorders, bipolar disorder, which I know very well, consists in these radical shifts in mood, can be potentially quite suddenly, very, very high to very, very low. Schizophrenia, eating disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, while some of the symptoms and signs of these disorders may look similar, each individual has a different history, different background, different experiences, and so it will look different to everyone. So it's really important, if you should see signs, if you should be worried about changes perhaps in behavior, that you have the conversation with somebody, that you get to understand and learn about what's going on so that you can better be equipped to know how to proceed, how to move forward, how to best support, and what really is going on. Because it's never going to look 100% the same on anyone or any two people. I want to talk about some of the things to say and what not to say when we're addressing some of these illnesses. They are very tough, tricky, awkward, uncomfortable conversations to have. I get it. I remember when I was in theater school, one of my really good friends had clinical depression. And when she was in an episode, when she was really sad, I found it very difficult. Now, I came from an upbringing where it wasn't really encouraged or it wasn't okay to be sad. And so some of the phrases, grin and bear it, you can manage it, it's a great day, we're above the ground, those were instilled in me. And so I sort of wanted to make her feel happier too, to choose to be happy. So I would say, choose to make it a great day. Can't you just, choose to be happy today? And she would look at me and say, you don't get it. And I didn't. I did not get it until myself had experienced a severe bout of depression. It's really hard to see somebody that we care about not feeling well, not being themselves, feeling sad, feeling down, and we just want to fix it. I get it. It makes sense. But when we say things like just choose to be happy or pull yourself together or you got to get on with your life, these phrases are not helpful. So be careful saying things like that. Avoid using words like psycho, crazy, loony, nuts. Now, this is something I still catch myself on a regular basis. Oh my gosh, did you see that? That was so crazy. But it can be interpreted as derogatory. So be careful. These words are not necessarily necessary and could potentially be pretty harmful or disrespectful. Also, when we're using an illness, don't use it as a description or identity of the person. So instead of saying you are a schizophrenic or you are bipolar, instead one of the things that you can say is you are living with schizophrenia or you have bipolar. So who they are and their illness, not synonymous. They're not the same thing. So be careful with that. Instead of using these derogatory labels, ask questions. Get to know the individual. Be able to offer support non-judgmentally. It's okay to not necessarily have the answers, but instead of saying just choose to be happy, maybe you can say, tell me a little bit about how you're feeling. I can't imagine what that's like, but I can't imagine it wouldn't be easy. Don't be afraid to say the wrong thing. Don't be afraid to get uncomfortable. Don't be afraid to get messy. We're not going to have all the answers. We're all still learning. But it is our place to be willing to enter into that conversation, even if we're going to get certain things wrong. So again, it's not your place to fix, to make everything okay, to offer suggestions, to have all the answers, or to advise. It's our job to hold space, to just be able to engage. Now, there are 3 areas that we are going to explore today: awareness, acceptance, and action. The first idea is awareness, and this means building an awareness around mental health, building an awareness around what is good mental health for ourselves, also learning more, gaining more of awareness around what it entails, what it looks like, what it is, what it isn't, and paying close attention not only to our own mental health, but the mental health of those around us, those that we live with, those that we work with, those that are in our social circles. So one of these things we need to do is just notice on a regular basis. And if perhaps we see people acting out of sorts, or we notice a colleague's behavior as being a bit different than normal, maybe they look unkept, or they look exhausted or sad, they have less energy or more energy than is typical. These could all be signs. If you see something, say something. So here are some of the things that you could potentially see in your colleagues that may be worth noting. If you see them being consistently late arriving to work, or having frequent absences, especially when this is a bit out of character, when there's a lack of cooperation or just a general inability to work with other people, a decrease in productivity, an increase in maybe accidents or safety problems, frequent complaints of fatigue or unexplained pains, difficulty concentrating, difficulty making decisions, and difficulty remembering things, perhaps making excuses for missed deadlines or for poor work, a decreased interest in wanting to spend time with other colleagues or getting involved in other projects that are going on, working excessive overtime over a prolonged period of time, expressions of strange or grandiose ideas, displays of anger or blaming of others, especially again if this is out of character for them. I want to talk for a second about stress, because workplace stress is unfortunately growing, and stress can account for so many illnesses. In fact, research now says that 75% of illnesses are stress related. And regardless of what the amount of stress is, it can lead to other things. So it can lead to an increased risk of anxiety, of burnout, of depression, substance use disorders. Stress is a big thing. And I think it's a word that we throw around all the time, that it's also almost made okay, normal, acceptable. Now, small amounts of stress are okay, but our body is not actually equipped to react to stress on a regular basis. Stress physiologically should be that cortisol that's released when we are in danger, when we're being chased by a bear. But stress when we think that we're going to get our report late, or when we have so many things that are demanded of us, or we're not on time for something, that kind of stress, our body, our brains, our nervous system cannot handle on a regular basis when all of that cortisol is being released. So we need to do what we can to mitigate stress on a regular basis, to make sure that we are staying within our capacity, and to ensure that we're speaking up and advocating for ourselves when something may need to change before it gets too late. One of the tools or ideas that I learned when I was doing my mental health first aid course was this acronym ALGIE. And I think when you are looking at either yourself or other people that you are living with, working with, it's a good way to remember things. It's a good way to actually look and assess any situation and give you some tools in terms of what to do next. So the A in ALGIE is to assess for potential suicide or harm. So that's always the first thing. Okay, how severe is this situation? How immediately do we maybe need to take action? The L is to listen non-judgmentally. It's very easy to come into a situation and think you know what's going on, but to be able to be listening non-judgmentally and create a safe space where people can share what's actually going on is really important. Once information has been shared, the G is to give reassurance and information. It's going to be okay. We're going to get you support that you need. You know, there are a lot of people who deal with anxiety and depression. You're going to be okay. The first E is to encourage professional help. And the next one is to encourage self-help and other support strategies. So when we're encouraging them to get the help, maybe we have some resources. Maybe we go and find out together what are some resources. Maybe we help them set up an appointment with someone, a professional who may be able to help their situation. So these 5 steps are maybe helpful when you're not quite sure what to do, one at a time, step by step, to assess the situation, be able to offer support, and then figure out where they can go next from there. I think it's also very important to make sure you're looking at yourself. Is there sufficient self-care that's going on? Are you checking in with yourself on a regular basis? Looking at yourself. How are you sleeping? How is your mood? Are you sleeping less or more than normal? I know life is busy. I know there are so many things competing with our time and attention, and we have so many people to look after. We're often the last people on that ladder. And yet, if we are not looking after ourselves, we're not going to be able to take care or look after anybody else. So I think self-care is really, really important, and to check in on yourself on a regular basis. I want to look at the things that can really play a role and have an impact on our mental health that are things that are within our control. So oftentimes there are things that, they get in our way that are not in our control, especially some of these illnesses and situations at work, but there are a lot of things that are within our control. And so we need to explore these today. And these are some ideas that I'm quite passionate about because they get in the way of us being brave. The first one is perfectionism. There are so many of us out there that expect everything to be perfect, and we want things to be right out of the gates. Perfectionism is having this expectation of these unrelenting high standards for ourselves and our work that are impossible to meet, and yet we try. We really go to great lengths to try and get things to be perfect, and this plays a toll. This has an impact on our mental health, on how we feel about ourselves, on our stress levels, on how we show up. We have to stop trying to be perfect. We have to bring in this idea that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to be messy. It's okay to try, especially if it's something that we're doing for the first time. When we're trying a new thing, it's not going to be perfect. We don't want it to be perfect because, well, then it wouldn't be real. And realistically, it just keeps us paralyzed. There is a real thing called perfectionistic paralysis. And if this is you, then I challenge you to come up with an affirmation or a mantra. Perhaps done is better than perfect, or I am enough exactly as I am. There's no such thing as perfect. Whatever you need to tell yourself, perfectionism gets in our way, and it does play a role. The next idea is people pleasing. I am guessing as an administrative professional, you are very good at taking care of people around you. You are very good at making sure that everyone has what they need, that you are on top of everything, and perhaps not necessarily taking care of yourself. We already talked about this, how it's so important to look after yourself first. But so long as you are saying yes to everyone and everything that is thrown in front of you, there's always something or someone that we have to say no to. And that person is often you, me, us. It is okay to put yourself at the forefront. In fact, it's really important. And this doesn't necessarily mean being selfish. That means being self-aware and recognizing that you need to please yourself too. If we're constantly pleasing other people and trying to get gold stars and we want that approval, that recognition, that validation, I get it, trust me. We have to at some point be able to determine our own internal barometer for success. We have to be able to give ourselves our own gold stars because praise and appreciation can be as addictive as sugar. And when we take that as the truth, even though negative feedback and criticism is very poor, if we take that to be the truth, if we take positive feedback and praise as the, capital T truth, more detrimental, more addictive than sugar, and we never are able to figure out how we've done a good job according to ourselves. So watch the people pleasing and start to give yourself your own gold stars. The next idea is paralleling, i.e. comparison. It is so easy, all too easy, to compare where we are with other people, especially with this online world. We compare our everyday life or our behind the scenes with everybody else's highlight reel. And it's not real, even though it looks pretty darn exciting. And we can be a minute or two on one of the social media platforms and all of a sudden feel terrible about our life. We're not on a yacht. We're not, flying in a corporate private jet to some exotic place. That's okay. That's okay because it's not necessarily real. And we have to just be true to where we are. Sometimes we compare ourselves to where somebody is 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead of us in our career or in our lives, and it makes us feel less than. The only person you should compare yourself to is the person you were yesterday. And unless you're prepared to trade 100% of your life for 100% of somebody else's, you do not get to compare. It really is the thief of all joy. And then we have proving as well as pretending or performing. We want to prove we have it all together. We want to pretend we have it all together. We want to perform so it looks like we have it all together. It is exhausting trying to keep up with the Joneses all the time. Who are the Joneses anyway? And yet we want to be able to prove that we have it all together. It's okay. It's okay to not be okay. Let's not pretend to have it all figured out. Let's not perform to be somebody that we're not. Well, let's not prove that we, can check off all the boxes and all the to-do lists and, do it all perfectly each and every day. We're doing ourselves a disservice, and we're also doing a disservice to all of the people around us in our life, because when you are real, when you are human, when you allow yourself to take your guard down and to just be your authentic self, you give permission to other people to be themselves as well. And again, it is exhausting and can for sure lead to burnout. And then finally, procrastinating, pausing, percolating. We put off the stuff that we have to do. Now, sometimes procrastination plays a role. I get it. I like to have that sort of adrenaline rush before I've got a deadline, and that kind of propels me to get into action. But sometimes we procrastinate because we don't feel ready. We don't feel good enough. We're waiting for that magic moment to arrive, that perfect moment to arrive. We're waiting for all of our ducks to be in a row. We're waiting for our inboxes to be at zero before we take that first step or go after what we want. And I have news for you. That perfect moment is never going to magically arrive. Your inboxes will never be at zero. So it's about learning to take that first imperfect step and to learn and figure it out as you go. All right. So perfectionism, people pleasing, paralleling, proving, procrastinating. Get honest with yourself and look at where that may be coming up in your life and maybe where it's no longer serving you and it might be time to let it go. I want to move on to a place of acceptance. So now we have this awareness. We have an awareness of what's going on maybe in our life, an awareness of what's going on in perhaps the lives of the people close to us, or we're noticing behaviors more. And we're also gaining an awareness of some of the things that are coming up that may not be helpful, that we're recognizing may actually be harmful. Once we have that awareness, it is not about judging or making ourselves wrong or making ourselves feel bad. It's about learning to now accept all that is, all that isn't, everything that has happened to get us to where we are now, and then being able to choose something different if we want moving forward. One of the most profound things that I learned while I was in treatment was what I call the acceptance equation. Here it is. Pain plus acceptance equals pain. The idea being that experiencing pain is part of the human experience. It's inevitable. We can't move away from it, whether or not that pain is losing a loved one or losing a job or losing a relationship, or whether or not that pain is just extreme amount of stress or things that we really weren't counting on. Pain is something we are all going to experience. You, your colleagues, your neighbors, your dog, at some point in their life are going to experience pain. But the problem is when we try and push that pain down, when we repress it, when we deny it, when we try and pretend it's not there, or when we want to jump through it without actually going through the experience, that is when the problem begins. Because pain plus non-acceptance equals suffering. And suffering is what keeps you stuck. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So again, it's about facing whatever it is that we're feeling, whatever it is that we're experiencing, what we're going through, working through it. And this was one of the biggest lessons I had. I was in such denial for the first over year of my diagnosis. I didn't want this to be me. I didn't want people to look at me differently, treat me differently. My life was very different. And all of a sudden, this person who was trying to look good all the time, to be liked, to please, to be perfect, well, all of that was for naught, because I now had this thing that in my mind was going to set me apart, was going to make me, make me look different. People were going to look at me differently. People were going to judge me. People were going to assume so many things about myself. And I didn't feel as good about myself. It was like that I had this, red letter on. And of course, yes, it's a part of me. It doesn't define me. And yes, I had to make changes. But the only way I could move on with my life and get to the next stage and figure out what that looked like is when I actually accepted that this is what was so. Did I want it? Absolutely not. But there are so many things that we've experienced in our life that we wouldn't have chosen, that we didn't want, that we don't want, that aren't fair. I get it. And so long as we pretend or deny or push it down, we are going to stay stuck. So we have to accept wherever we are in life, whatever has come our way, good, bad, ugly, all of it, if we want to be able to move on. And finally, now we are getting into the action stage. We have the awareness, we've chosen to accept it, and now we can get into a place of action. And this is where we gain our power back. There are a lot of things that you can't do, but there are a lot of things that you can do. And with respect to action, there are 4 words I want you to remember when being there and showing up for someone else, but also for yourself. Educate, engage, empathize, and empower. Educate. How can you learn more? How can you learn more about your symptoms? How can you learn more about what you might be going through? Maybe they're not symptoms, but maybe they're behaviors or thoughts or feelings. How can you educate yourself about some of the mental health illnesses, disorders, conditions that are out there that people in your life are living with? How can you educate yourself about things that you can do to prevent, some of these thoughts, ideas, feelings to grow into something bigger? How can you engage? How can you engage in awkward conversations, in hard conversations, in uncomfortable conversations, in courageous or brave conversations? One of the biggest ways, best ways we're going to learn is by having conversations with people who may be able to teach us some of their experiences. Now, they may not necessarily want to or be ready to, but if we really do want to learn and we really want to care and we want to know how we can best show up, we're going to have to engage in those tough conversations. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be messy, and it's important. Empathize. We don't necessarily need, and when I say we, I can't necessarily speak for other people, but when I was having conversations with some of my friends and colleagues and family members, I didn't necessarily want their sympathy. I didn't want them to feel sorry for me. I wanted them to empathize. You're not going to understand what someone is going through. And when I had people say, I understand, I looked at them like, really? Do you? Have you ever, been tranquilized in an emergency psychiatric unit and after having been arrested and handcuffed? I don't know. I mean, maybe you have. Awesome. Again, that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. And we want to know that people are there for us. And we want to know that people can empathize without feeling sorry for us. You don't have to understand it. Again, every experience is different. Even if you or someone has bipolar or has another mood disorder, or if you have depression or anxiety, or somebody that you work with does, even if you have same illnesses or conditions, disorders that you're living with, they're not going to show up the same way. So how can we empathize with somebody and not have all the answers, not feel like we got to fix it, not going to force them to feel better, but to just share space, to make it okay to not be okay. That's what empathizing is all about. And then finally, empower. How can we empower ourselves, and how can we empower them to the extent that they're ready, to the extent that we can, to do something differently moving forward? Now, there is a time and a place for empowerment. There's a time and a place for empathizing. There's a time and a place for engaging. And there's a time and a place for educating. And I put them in that order because we can't jump to empowering before we know what's going on, before we've actually held space and empathized with that person, before we've been able to even engage in a conversation. So we do need to go through these steps, but ultimately we want to empower, again, ourselves and individuals in our life with the things that they can still do, because there is always something you or I can do when it comes to our mental health. So how can we accept and go from this place of recognizing what's happening to figuring out what is even just one small step of action that we could take that would empower us to get back into control of our life, to know that there are certain things that we can do. So educate, engage, empathize, empower. Those are the things that you can do that can get you into action and that can really make a big difference. Engage in brave conversations. We've talked about this a little bit already, but the importance of doing this, I cannot stress enough. To mess up, to say, hey, listen, I don't know what to say. I'm going to get it wrong. I want to be able to help. It's hard not to want to fix, but I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn. I'm here to create a space where you can share, and I will be open non-judgmentally to just be here with you. Another part of this idea of brave conversations is on the other side, when you are going through something, to be able to advocate for yourself, to be able to say, hey, this isn't working for me. Hey, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make this deadline, or this is not something I have the capacity for right now. You have to be brave enough to raise your hand, to stand up for yourself, to advocate for what you need, and to acknowledge that it's okay if you can't do it all. You're only human after all. So stand up for yourself before it gets to a point where you completely burn out and you're going to have to take, stress leave for weeks, if not months. One of the big things that can have an impact on our mental health that is within our control are the idea of boundaries. Setting boundaries, recognizing we can't say yes to everyone, we can't say yes to everything, and we need to be able to be brave enough to honor those boundaries. Are they the personal boundaries? Are they your work boundaries? Are they, boundaries with respect to what's asked of you in your community or your neighborhood, your children, your pets, even your plants? Who knows? We all need boundaries, and you need to be brave enough to honor them, because when boundaries are crossed on a regular basis, the feelings, emotions, the overwhelm you could potentially feel impacts our mental health. It's big. It's very hard to set up boundaries, but I encourage you to really think about where in your life you may need to set up some boundaries, and how you can have someone help hold you accountable to make sure that you're sticking to them. Because the more we continue to break our boundaries, the more out of integrity we are with ourselves, the less brave we feel, the less confident we feel, and the more we're likely going to just continue to say yes to do all the things for all the people, and again, not necessarily healthy. One of the things that we can do with respect to our boundaries is to identify what our non-negotiables are. And when I say non-negotiables, what I mean are to identify the things that you need on a regular basis to be able to show up optimally and work at your most effective levels. So are your non-negotiables something like needing 8 hours of sleep a night? Or do you need to make sure that you have a 10-minute walk during your lunch break? Do you want to have 3 to 5 minutes every morning where you sit in silence and perhaps meditate? Do you need to get out to some workout classes? Do you need to have a phone call with that friend that always makes you laugh once a week? Do you need to make sure that you watch 2 cat videos a day that bring a smile to your face? Whatever your non-negotiables are, identify them and then fight hard to make sure that you are following them on a daily basis. This is really, really important. It is all too easy to let our sleep patterns fall away, or to stop our workouts, or to not do something that brings us joy, especially when we have a lot of stress going on at work and in our life. And yet, these are the times, these are the moments where it matters the most to take care of ourselves. So identify what your non-negotiables are, write them down, and work hard to make sure that you are honoring them on a regular basis, because they matter. Maybe your non-negotiable is to have a bubble bath once a week. Whatever it is, it's important. Now, I say bubble bath because self-care is similar to a part of perhaps your non-negotiables, but something separate, also worth discussing. Self-care is not only having bubble baths. It's not only allowing yourself to stay in your house coat and slippers on a Sunday. Self-care are doing the things that you need to do, that you want to do, that make you feel good, that make you feel whole, that make you want to show up in your best self, that bring you a smile to your face. So what are some activities that you're doing on a regular basis to look after your self-care? I had mentioned walking, going outside and exercising is a really, really important thing, but maybe you're also somebody who likes being creative. Do you like coloring or doing a puzzle or playing an instrument or singing or cooking or gardening? What are some self-care activities that you are doing on a regular basis? And if you are somebody that loves gardening, and you can't even remember the last time that you got a shovel and got your hands dirty with some soil, well, that may be the time to get back to it, right? If we're somebody that loves being around people and friends, and we've been so consumed in our life that we haven't been able to see any of our neighbors or friends recently, plan a brunch. Plan something where you can all get together and see one another, because once we're taking care of ourselves, right? Self-care. When we're taking care of ourselves, we're able to be the best version of ourselves in all areas. When we are living in alignment with our values, our non-negotiables, then it's so much easier to identify what our capacity is, identify what we can say yes to, what we want to say no to, because we are living in alignment with what's most important to us. The challenge is when we've become so busy that we don't even take the time to take a step back to say, oh, I really need to make sure that I go for a walk this week, or, oh, wow, I haven't, watched a comedy in months, and that was the thing that used to always bring a smile to my face. No wonder I feel a little bit off. It's so important to recognize what are the things that we need and to schedule them in to make sure that they happen. Self-care is real, and it's very, very important. Here are some ways that we can employ some self-care in the moment where we may need it, regardless of how much time we have and regardless of where we are. So these lists are non-exhaustive. There are a few ideas, and I'm sure you have other ones that you can utilize, that you have utilized in the past and that have worked for you. But the reason why I share these lists is because even if you only have 1 minute, there's still something you can do. If you have 5 minutes, there is something you can do. And if you have a whole 30 minutes, there are other things that you can do. But in the moment when we get stressed or overwhelmed or feel like our shoulders are coming up and our breathing is getting quicker, there are things that we can do that don't take long that can actually make an impact. So self-care on a regular basis is really, really important. And then sometimes there's self-care activities or coping strategies that we need to employ in the moment. So some of the examples, if we only have 1 minute, let's say, is we can do calf raises or toe curls. We could drink a glass of water. We could say an affirmation to ourselves. Big fan of affirmations. Having a post-it note or something near your screen or in your office that you can say to yourself on a regular basis. You could take some deep breaths. You don't have to go anywhere or do anything for that. You could try some shoulder rolls, right? So these are ideas that even if you have a minute, you can do, and chances are it will have an impact. Shake your shoulders even just now. See what that feels like. Ha, lovely. Okay, if you had 5 minutes, what are the things you could do? You could take some lunges around your desk. You could meditate. You could find something to laugh at, like a little cat video. So here's some ideas for 5 minutes. And then when you have 30 minutes, maybe it is having a bubble bath. Maybe it is going for a nice long walk. Maybe you have a conversation with somebody that always makes you feel better, or you do some cooking or gardening. Now, my invitation to you is that you try on a few of these different coping strategies, self-care activities, ideas that work for you. So try a few different ones and identify the ones that, after you practice them, you actually did feel calmer, you did feel more grounded, you did feel more in the moment. If you can identify 1 or 2, 3 max, but 1 or 2 in each of these columns that you circle or you write down or you do something to know that they are your go-to in the moments, when you are feeling stressed, in the moments where you feel your blood pressure pumping or when stuff is going a bit awry, you have something to go to. So instead of, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed, I don't know what to do, oh my God, you're like, oh, breathing. Breathing really works for me. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths, and then I'm going to assess the situation and see what I can do next. Or if you have 5 minutes, you're like, I don't know, like lunges. Lunges are my go-to. I'm going to lunge around my desk, around the office. When you have those, you don't have to think about it in the moment. You just automatically know where to go, and immediately you will feel differently. I invite you to try this on, and I promise you it will make a difference. So, it is okay to be okay. It doesn't make you bad or wrong. It makes you human. Now, I don't know if you have ever been handcuffed or ridden in the back of a police car, and if you have, at least you and I can both check that off our bucket lists. And hopefully you've never been diagnosed with a mental health illness. But even if you haven't, I do know you've had your fair share of challenges, of struggles, of trials and tribulations. I know this because there isn't a single person who hasn't. It's part of the human experience, and it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And if we all adopted this belief, we would create safer, braver workplaces for all. It has been an honor and a privilege. Thank you for showing up, for playing full out with me. And I would love to keep this conversation going. Feel free to reach out to me. Here's my email, my phone number, my website. Let's connect and let's engage in this difficult, uncomfortable, messy, but very important and brave conversation around mental health. We'll see you soon.